Welcome back to the Fit for Fortune podcast. My guest today is Austin Stout. Austin is one of my mentors and one of those online coaches that is constantly raising standards for the industry. His commitment to his clients is second to none. This guy literally puts an out-of-office automation email on when he steps away for a Friday afternoon. But commitment alone wouldn't have gotten him to where he is. He's extremely competent at what we might just call functional health. And he's able to help a wide range of clients with often quite nasty hormonal and digestive troubles. He juxtaposes being a hardcore bodybuilder meathead at first glance with being an extremely bright, health-focused individual with cute cat tattoos. In today's episode, I'm hoping to talk about stress and gut health if we have the time for it. So, Austin, how can stress interfere with someone's ability to lose fat?
To lose body fat?
Yeah.
So I think when we get into that argument, the first thing I'm going to point out is I do subscribe to the idea of the law of thermodynamics, like calories in and calories out matter. So let's throw that out there first, because I think I am definitely not in the camp of some of the biohackers or people you will see online that are like, this idea is outdated, it does not matter. That is not true, because we still need to be in an energy deficit, right? I think really when we ask about stress and body fat loss, really what we're talking about is maybe the adaptations that it creates that make it very difficult to lose body fat, right? So, in the fitness industry, we're pretty keen on these adaptations. Like, we have research on this stuff. We know that, thyroid conversion downregulates. We know that leptin levels can go down. We know that you become even become more efficient at movement. For example, if you lose body weight, you are lighter, so you're moving less weight through space. So that would be an adaptation of sorts, right? So there's a lot of adaptations that happen. So where stress falls into that, is stress is likely just going to accelerate those adaptations. That's the easiest way to think about it, is it's going to basically, all of the stuff that you experience and that I experience when we try to lose body fat, it's going to jump that up tenfold, right? Or maybe more in some cases. So it's not a matter of if you can or can't lose fat, because if you ate 0 calories, if you just starved and you ate nothing, you're still going to lose weight, right? So when we see these people on low calorie diets and having difficulty losing fat in a high stress state, the first thing you hear by the calories in, calorie out zealots are they're cheating on their diet. Right. Which, hey, you know what? Some of them probably are. Granted, I've been coaching long enough. I know how it goes. But I feel like I also have a decent judge of character with people and enough evidence to kind of know that that's not always the case. Right.
You do get those type A clients that you can tell by just how they respond that they're not cheating. They're not overlooking things. Right.
Yeah. So what is happening, I guess, is the question. And when you're seeing those adaptations, there can be a few things that are happening. One is some of it can simply just be kind of displacing the weight or the body fat or the cosmetic change with inflammation and fluid, for example, that you're gaining from on a very simple, like a very simple scale. When the adrenal glands are stimulated from stress, aldosterone level goes up generally, which means sodium and water retention. That's why when someone's like, I'm holding water, I'm stressed, right? That can just be simply a shift from those, from that cortisol response or from that adrenal response. That's a very simple physiological response that we see. So if you're always like sympathetic nervous system driven all the time, yeah, you'll probably hold some fluid, right? You'll probably see, or maybe you'll see fluctuations, like larger fluctuations in body weight. Is that going to affect the way that you look? Sure. Maybe there's still body fat loss going on underneath of that, potentially, but you might not see it as well. So that's a basic response. And then when we get deeper, now we start going way down this rabbit hole. This is where I start to rely more on experience and anecdotal evidence than I do on simply science. And the reason for that is there's limited research on some of these really extreme situations that, you had kind of cited at the beginning of getting some of these nasty cases. About the closest thing I can really think of that a lot of people might know about with like long-term chronic like food calorie restriction. You think of like the starvation study. I mean, I guess that's kind of in the realm, but I think the problem with even citing that study is I don't know what kind of state those people's bodies were in prior to that study, right? You could look at something like that and say, all right, this created this much adaptation. I don't know, whatever. We saw basal metabolic rate, leptin levels, whatever these things are, they drop X number of percent at maximum, right? But what was it like? What kind of position were they in prior to that? Because what we're seeing with these folks, or the folks that I'm working with, is decades of adaptation in some cases, or it could be years. It could simply be years. But generally in some of these really severe cases, it's minimum of a few years of like chronic beating the body to death with every stress stimulus you can think of, training, environment, psychological stress. Maybe if they're enhanced, they're adding like oxidative stress from extra supplementation, like all of these things. How do you study that? And I don't think you can ethically. I don't think that anyone could create that study, and who the hell is going to volunteer for that? So when we say that the research only shows that this amount of adaptation to metabolic rate happens, I said, okay, I'm not arguing with what it shows. I'm just simply telling you what I see, right?
And your experience is that it can be more?
Yeah, I'm just simply saying, like, this is what I see. Now, I have some different theories as to why these things can happen. There's even some, I'll say some rabbit holes that are a little, that I don't even fully understand, like looking at like trauma, for example, looking like long-term, like extremely long-term trauma response and stress and what that does to the body. We get into terms like, if anyone's very science-minded, if you heard the term like epigenetics, which would be kind of these switches turning on and off for the adaptations. When I looked into epigenetics, a lot of what I could find was related to like gene mutations and things, but there's also stuff showing like if someone had an eating disorder in their teens, how that may cause some epigenetic changes in their adult life, right? Because of a history of something. So we could translate that to, well, what if this person, if this client is 30 years old and they competed chronically through their 20s and they had a lot of stress, a lot of GI, a lot of hormone. They never came out of that state. They never fully recovered. You get the gist of it. What would that do? Would that create an epigenetic adaptation? Right? Would there be some kind of adaptation that's just kind of greater than surface level that we're not seeing or we haven't studied? And this is all just theoretical connecting, kind of just like putting pieces together. So when you get cases like this is what I'm talking about. A great example would be people come in to a new coach. A lot of coaches like to kind of feed them up a little bit at the beginning, right? Right? They're like, hey, we need to get your calories up to a better starting point, right? We need to reduce your stress. We need to look at your labs. All these things are great. So they do it. Let's say that they even get them up to what they consider a good starting point, right? Then they drop calories and nothing happens. Then they drop calories again and nothing happens again.
Yep. Okay.
How many times? I mean, I suppose we can keep going, right? And you can up to a point. I mean, the reason that you can't just keep dropping calories, I mean, I suppose you can, is you're not going to, if you do, once you get low enough to actually lose body fat, your performance is probably going to be so hindered that you can't retain muscle tissue. And we all are humans and probably have jobs and stuff that we actually have to be able to cognitively function for. So sure, Sally, I can put her on 500 calories and she's going to lose weight, but
at what cost?
She's probably going to get fired in a month. All of her hormones are going to be shot. If she gets through one menstrual cycle, we're probably lucky doing that for a month. I mean, in a day, sure. You could basically starve anyone for 2 days. It's not going to hurt anything. But that the problem isn't whether or not you can do it. It's if you should do it and what the residual long-term effects of that is going to be. And mentally, who's going to do that?
So what's the solution here? I think you said that certain clients you only take on if they do some therapy beforehand or alongside working with you.
I mean, time is always a huge variable with those folks. It's kind of like a framework that you can even use for contest prep, for example. And you're thinking of like, how long does it take someone to recover from one of these situations? Well, we have quantifiable data like lab work, right? Blood glucose, heart rate, I don't know, wear your Oura ring, I don't know, whatever you want, right? So if you prepped for 5 months and you want to do a show the next year, you're going to have another 5 months the next year. So you only have a 7-month block in there that you're not prepping. What is that? It's going to probably take you 7 to even be fully, I mean, maybe not 7. It's probably going to take you 3 or 4 at minimum, if you're a female especially, to be really, really fully recovered and like optimized. Okay.
You can fully recover from
like the extreme fat loss phase, which would be prep. I mean, prep's an extreme thing.
So you just mean prep itself, but not like the decades of beating.
Right. So now, but I'm just giving you a short-term example. So now compound that over, let's say someone does prep, they're doing multiple shows every single year, whatever it is. And honestly, even general population clients that don't compete, we see this with them all the time. A lot of that really comes down to the fact that they're still doing a lot of the same things stress-wise. They probably go through phases of what we would call yo-yo dieting, right? Extreme restriction, potentially with overeating, so on and so forth. And they kind of come to a point where like every time that they do this, it works less. Which that's what happens in prep, right? First prep, you do it. Second prep's like, ooh, this is a little bit harder than the last time. Third prep, you don't take enough time, right? Third prep, you're like, shit, this isn't working. What is happening? Why is this not working? I'm having to do twice as much cardio, eat half the amount of food just to get the same condition. And I kind of look like I'm losing muscle tissue. It's not even, right? So it happened. All the same stuff happens to Gen Pop people, right? It's just really this accumulation. Like there's a book, if anyone likes, book readers, you ever heard of The Body Keeps Score?
Yeah.
Right. You look at like trauma and really the whole idea, and the term that we would use in fitness or bodybuilding would be allostatic load, would be a term that we could kind of like lump in there. Accumulation of all these things over time. So when you are getting a client, first thing I'm going to do is I kind of try to, and this is difficult, I'm trying to take like an assessment of what is this allostatic load? So I can look at back history. So I need to know what's going on right now, of course, and maybe blood work and things, but also back history, right? Of basically the same questions I'm asking, but over the past, 10 years or whatever. If I see anything that's very alarming, like let's say that there is the history of a lot of dieting with no result, or a lot of preps, I'm likely going to have to, get on an additional phone call with this person or ask more questions or something, because I guarantee there's more stuff I got to extract out. Or on the other hand, maybe the consultation looks relatively clean, except for the fact that they over deliver on some of these sections, meaning they're overemphasizing some of these sections. What does that mean? Anxiety, right? Which is fine. You know what? People have anxiety. I get that. However, you can normally tell when there's hyperfixation on so many things. That's another sympathetic driver. So most of those people have some kind of history there. And the thing about like bodybuilding, especially, or if you're really extreme in fitness, is who would want to do something that restrictive and that extreme? Who gravitates towards that?
Those kind of people.
I'm not talking general fitness. I'm not talking going to the gym and like going to the store and buying healthy foods, not tracking. Who actually, because I know a lot, I've learned a lot about myself, and I've learned a lot about my history and my tendencies. And even then, I'm probably one of the most adaptable bodybuilders that I know. Like I don't really hyperfixate on anything anymore. And I used to, right? Heavily. And I know why, and I understand that, but that took that took a lot of like self-discovery and therapy and like all these things. So if you get somebody that's really, really, really just everything, zoned in like that, there's a reason for that. This is not just a quirk in your personality. It's deeper. Okay. Those people generally have difficulties because, again, you're chronically in this heightened state all the time. Now, those are the obvious ones. The hard ones to point out are the ones that internalize everything. Now, I'm not going to give everyone a psychology lesson. That's like a different topic. But when we get them, I'm still going to go through the quantifiable data. I still want to get blood work, right? I still want to look at symptom assessment. What are our primary concerns? Almost everyone has a cosmetic goal. Like, I want to lose weight. I'm like, okay, but my question is like, why is all this stuff that you already tried not working? Because if you ate less and you moved more, according to everyone on social media, you just lose weight, right? So like, what's going on? So I need to kind of figure out like, what did they tried? What did they not tried? What's worked? What's not worked? Dig into that information. Usually in the symptoms, I can pretty much tell where the problem's going to be. It's a digestive issue. It's a stress issue. It's a hormone issue. When I say it's a stress issue, everything is a stress issue. So there's that, right? I like to, with every person, I like to help just kind of set realistic expectations at the beginning as to what this process is going to be like. My coaching business is interesting because I get people that come to me that don't have body composition goals, which I find is probably not that common in the industry, because even functional health clients still have body composition goals. I get people that are so damn screwed up. They're like, dude, I just got to feel better. I don't even care.
Yeah, I saw your post the other day about that like child, like she was like 6 or something.
Yeah, 4.
That you helped the digestive with. Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, well, that was obviously a kind of a specific circumstance, but
do you have a lot of those?
My point is that some people are just so bad that they're like, dude, I don't even care if I lose weight right now. I just got to feel better. And everyone, unfortunately, they had to get so bad before they got the help they needed. But if they are someone that has cosmetic goals, of course, we have to kind of prioritize things in an order that makes sense. Generally, function first, cosmetic second. Granted, a lot of people do look better as they function better because that inflammation comes off, that water comes off. So you do generally notice improvements in the way that you look, even though you're not directly working on that. If that makes sense? Yep. Because if we don't fix it, then it's like doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Like the thing about me is, yeah, I probably know some things as far as cyclically dieting them or doing refeeds or diet breaks or taking, like I can kind of push and pull a little bit more effectively because I've done it. But I can't fight when your body's locked down, it's locked down. And there's nothing outside of me just starving you to death. It's nothing I can do that's going to be magic until I fix you.
What do you do to restore them? What do you do to fix them? Similarly to how you said that competitors take 3-4 months to get back to baseline. If someone has so much history of adaptations, do you just need to take a longer time off these stressors?
That's obviously the first piece, right? Is time. I'll be honest. I could pretty much give you a protocol for everything as far as here's, for SIBO, for estrogen dominance, for candida, for, I don't know, Hashimoto's autoimmunity. But I'll be honest, these days, I've gotten more and more simple with people in my starting practices. And because I'm just finding, and this is something that's kind of industry wide, is as everyone got more interested in the functional space, it was an equation, right? It's like, well, here's a GI map. This is SIBO. What's the protocol for SIBO? Implement protocol, done. People don't work that way. Okay. So what I've really been trying to do, and I use those things, right? I'm not saying I don't. I'm just saying that it's often not my initial approach. Let's like reverse engineer this. Because everyone says I'm a root cause coach. I coach the root cause. I said, well, if you're implementing a protocol right out of the gate, I don't know if that is a root cause. Now, I don't know what you would define as a protocol, because I suppose you could say using any supplements in a combination would be a protocol. So I'm not going to get into that. But my point is that I started thinking, like, what actually is the root cause? So stress, always 100%. If it's not, I will be shocked. I will give me your Venmo. I will send you money. You know, now granted, it's a varying levels of that, right? Varying degrees. 2 is anytime there's usually like a GI, some kind of gut issue, or even hormone issues or autoimmunity. These are more common things. Probably is a inflammatory component and like an immune system response of some type. You know, you're swollen, you're bloated, you're inflamed, you're holding fluid. When you have these issues, your body, the immune system reacts to everything, right? Like when you get sick, immune system reacts. When you cut your arm, immune system reacts. You know, it's sending white blood cells. And, you know, when you get sick or get allergies, it's sending histamine there, right? So same kind of thing happens when you have a like inflammation or you have IBD, inflammatory bowel. It's still an injury or an insult to your system, right? So the immune system's reacting, you're getting inflammation. So the difference is that when you get sick, it's acute inflammation. When you, in this situation, it's chronic. It's never coming back down, right? So we have definitely probably need to do something with the immune system and stress and the maybe inflammatory response. And I'll say the other piece, believe it or not, and this one might seem kind of very basic, is a lot of people are actually have a lot of nutrient deficiencies, believe it or not. And this is one that I'm finding more and more, because I think that I remember when way back when If It Fits Your Macros was like the thing, right? Pretty much we thought that you wouldn't get nutrient deficiencies just because we're still eating quality food for the most part. And the problem with that thought process is that if you're eating enough and with some variety, yeah, you're probably okay. And when we define nutrient deficiencies with our medical terms, your deficiencies categorized as something that's extreme, that's causing like some disease that you can't even never even seen, like rickets or scurvy or some shit like that. Like no one's, you know what I mean? That doesn't happen. We're not in a third world country. Okay. But what I'm talking about is more low to moderate grade deficiencies, because really when we look at micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, essentially maybe though like electrolytes in that, because they're small molecules, is they're kind of a catalyst to processes, right? Every process, it's like if you modify your car, but you don't put, good enough gas in your car to run the modified engine, it's not going to run well. When you're trying to implement these protocols or implement anything, you need the match to light that fire. So a great example would be something like magnesium, probably the most common deficiency that I see. A lot of people supplement with magnesium now, pretty common. A lot of people use like magnesium glycinate or high quality form. Maybe they take, like 400 milligrams is kind of like the standard recommendation. A lot of people take it at night because it can be calming, so on and so forth. Cool. That's great. However, magnesium is like when your adrenaline levels go up, your blood level of magnesium drops. It is, you see this, you can go on PubMed right now. You can go on, look up literature about mechanistically, you can literally see the correlation between stress response and serum magnesium levels. And I see low, like for example, alkaline phosphatase, that is an enzyme in the body, but low alkaline phosphatase generally is correlated with low magnesium level, or zinc sometimes. But I think magnesium a lot of the time, because of how the metabolic demand of that goes up when you're stressed. You're kind of like blowing through this magnesium. It's like your body's just like blowing through it, right? Kind of like if you were sweating electrolytes out, you would need more. It's not the same thing.
What is it being used for though?
So the magnesium is actually structurally helping create the adrenaline. Okay, so right. You require that. And I say an epinephrine. I mean, I guess it depends on, it's all the same, essentially. But and magnesium has a lot of other functions, though. You know, it's in hard tissues like bones and things like that too. But when you look at that, you can see how someone that's high stress could be potentially deficient in that nutrient. So if we take a marker like the alkaline phosphatase, which is a pretty accurate, relatively accurate measure of magnesium deficiency, and I want to say it's in nanograms in the US. I could be wrong, so I should know that. I believe it's in nanograms. But anyhow, let's say a reading is, I want it to be a 50 or above, 50 to 90. I don't know, 55 to 90. I mean, I just got one the other day that was 9. Magnesium is also important in digestion and helps with digestive motility. And I'm not talking about magnesium citrate. That's a stool softener that like blows through you. Not that. But interestingly enough, so I get a really low alkaline phosphatase. I see this stuff. I do a lot of consults for labs and digestion. And I do GI maps with people, but now anymore, there's so many things foundationally in micronutrient wise and just basic stuff that's off that I usually just start with that. So like this comes in, I had an alkaline phosphatase of 9 and constipation. Okay. I thought, all right, well, we definitely have nutrient deficiencies. And there was some other things off in the CBC, like in the red blood cells, you can see some like B12 and folate deficiencies with the size of the red blood cells. Like, okay, well, we got nutrient deficiencies, so let's fix that stuff. Let's implement some micronutrients. Fine. I gave him a blend of magnesium. It was glycinate and malate and threonate, I believe. It was a one product that had 3 different forms. And the main reason for that is it helps get into different tissues. The threonate, I believe, gets into the brain a little bit better, blood-brain barrier. But anyhow, I said, I just want we're going to do a really high dose for like 4 weeks. And then we're going to reconvene and we'll do another consult if we need to. 1,000 milligrams for 120 pound female, small person, right? 1,000 milligrams, 2 bowel movements a day.
Wow.
Now, granted, I don't necessarily think that fixed everything, right? Because I still think there's still some bloating and stuff. So there's probably some overgrowth of bacteria, SIBO, I don't know, something. We're going to fix that. But my point is that what if I would have just taken the GI map and just gave them antimicrobials for SIBO? Would it have worked as well? Probably not. It would have killed off the bacteria, but it wouldn't have really fixed one of the major roots of the problem. And the thing about this is you don't have to be an expert on every single piece of blood work to understand this concept, because I think it's intimidating to think, well, I don't know how to see all these nutrient deficiencies in blood work. And you can learn it. I can teach it to you. But I mean, you don't have to be an expert at it if you're just kind of wanting to learn how to use this in your everyday client plans. A great thing to do is think of like nutrient variety. Dude, I'm telling you, this is one of the most powerful tools. Food variety is one of the most powerful tools that I do with a lot of these new clients that have GI issues, that have high stress, that have nutrient deficiencies. Because what do bodybuilders do? What do fitness people do? They eat the same 5 foods for 10 years. Because it's just convenient and you like the way I don't know, maybe you don't like the way they taste, but it's convenient. Right? So, okay, I get that. But you got to think, and now we have like Chronometer, right? Where people can plug stuff in. If you eat 5 foods a day, go plug it in the Chronometer and let me know how that looks. It's not going to be good. So, of course it's a problem over time. Now, from a gut perspective, if you're seeing those kinds of issues, the bacteria are being fed by the foods that you're eating. So when you're only eating 5 foods, the diversity of the bacteria goes, of course. So how do you do that? Like, how do you implement that? I mean, on a very, very, very basic level, if you eat 3 to 4 different types of fruits and vegetables, I will say a week. So when I say a week is, let's try to have like multiple servings of each per day, but within a week, 3 to 4 different types. You don't have to have a different fruit every day, but maybe 3 days you have this. Next time you go to the grocery store, you pick up a different one, and then you have this, right? So over the whole course of the week, you're having probably a small amount of fruit and a small amount of vegetable in every meal or close to it. And you're rotating that maybe once throughout the week. So you're still, if you do like, I got this like group A of fruit and veg and group B of fruit and veg, I got like 3 in each. There's 6 different types. And maybe you don't even like 6 types. Do the best you can. But I mean, right there, that's a ton of micronutrition variance. First off, you throw in some high quality meats and stuff in there, hopefully some red meat. Hopefully you're not vegetarian or vegan. Sorry. It's possible, guys. I work with some vegans. No, I'm not going to do one. But
possible, just not worth it.
It's hard. I mean, I would agree. But you throw some quality meats in there. You throw some like little variants of fat in there, some monounsaturated fats from oils and things. Omega-3s, I don't know. Man, the amount that you can progress from a health standpoint with a lot of these like gut issues, for example, and even with the stress. Because the thing is, when you're nutrient deficient, when you get stressed, you need the resources to create cortisol and create dopamine and adrenaline to handle whatever's coming at you, right? If you don't have that, you're not even going to be able to deal with the stress as well. So you don't recover as well from training. You get pissed off a lot more because you just don't have the resources to create to chemically create it. So for example, if you're really, really burnt out and you're kind of like this adrenal insufficiency state, like you'd call it, like a very low cortisol, for example. And again, people are like, oh, adrenal fatigue, whatever. Listen, if you're not creating enough cortisol and you are probably likely not creating a lot of the other things that are coming from the adrenals, like dopamine, do you know how sad, do you know how like flat you feel? I don't even know, maybe sad is not the word, but flat. There's no arousal. Like think about if you went in the gym and you're trying to get ready for a set of hack squats and you're like, you listen to your music, I don't know, pumping up, whatever, and no adrenaline is being released. You're like, what's happening? Mm-hmm. Nothing's working. So, but that's training is a stressor. So now think when you're sitting in traffic, or even worse, you're with your partner and you can't get excited about anything. I'm not talking about even being aroused. I'm just talking like generally engaged because you're flat. Everything's flat. So I think that people underestimate how much carryover these issues will have. And you were really asking mostly about like initial steps with these people. I mean, the food variety is a huge initial step. Filling in micronutrients. I mean, these are applicable things. Filling in micronutrients is a huge initial step. As a coach, advocating for variety in their life can be a step if they're not good at that. What I mean by that is usually I notice this, and this isn't an absolute statement, but I notice that the younger crowd that's earlier in bodybuilding, they don't have a lot of outside responsibilities. They probably have a job that pays their bills, pays for their apartment, maybe, or whatever they have. They maybe have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Maybe a lot of them aren't married. A lot of them don't have kids yet. A lot of them, maybe if they have a business or something that's very new, they don't have like these 25 other things that they have to worry about. So they're like, bodybuilding, cool. I was there. Got it. And I would say I am still just as hardcore of a bodybuilder that I was then. It's just I'm a lot smarter than I was then. So what I mean by variety is there's literally research showing how joy and love and like all these things and touch actually decrease cortisol and help and like literally improve your ability to manage stress. And I mean, it's out there. You guys can find it. I think my buddy Joe Jeffrey the other day actually posted something about how in prep there was talking about like getting a hug and like being close with your partner. And he posted some research on that. This is real stuff. So when I say variety in the life, is if all you do is this thing and you don't have any other hobbies or interests, I am telling you that you're going to burn out at some point. You think you're hardcore, and listen, you might be for a while, but eventually something will happen. Maybe not now. It might take 10 years. But my point is that you probably won't reach your potential. The second piece is that you will be better if you have some of this in your life. And the reason for that is that if you know how, and I say this all the time, if you know how to prepare meals, eat meals, and train, because a lot of people have coaches at this point in time anyhow, what do you have to think about? Nothing. So if you know how to basically make your meals and make sure you get them in the day, yeah, time management skills is important as a fitness person or a bodybuilder. Sure. I think once you have it down, it doesn't take that much thought though, does it? So my point is that what are you doing? What are you doing for yourself by not having any other joy in your life? Like, what is there to actually think about? You just sitting there watching the clock? No, you're probably watching TikTok or scrolling through like useless ass Instagram reels. If you want to go out and educate yourself, that's one thing. But if you're sitting there watching God knows what, just do something constructive that actually brings joy to your life, not these little dopamine cookies that you're giving yourself all the time. You will just kind of come to almost resent. A lot of people kind of come to almost resent bodybuilding at a time because they don't really develop socially that well, and they don't develop in relationships that well. I think one of the things Joe had said in his post is how many people he's seen have marital issues and get divorces and stuff in prep. Not good.
Understandable if you've seen anyone prep.
Right. And prep's hard. Listen, I'll tell you that prep is hard. And I have prepped quite a few times. And I know that at the very end, when I just can't even keep my eyes open, but I'm still trying to make sure that I am cognizant of that. And I'm still being mindful around my partner and making sure that she has what she needs. She's very understanding that last couple weeks, but man, I can pretty much maintain it all the way up to like the very end. I need just a little bit, give me a little bit of grace for a week or two, 3 weeks maybe. But I think the problem with that is that some of the people are doing this all year because they're off season prep. It don't matter because I'm a bodybuilder. I can't, go have fun. I got to have my whatever. You can eat your meal. You don't have to tell anyone. Okay. You can drink your water. It's fine. I've been doing this over and over and over again. I literally, all the people in my house, none of them bodybuild. I go to kids' events. They're teenagers, but I go to their events. I go to the activities that they're involved in. 4 days out from the show, I went to a theater performance. I just ate. I just, pushed my meal back 30 minutes. I was hungry, but oh well, not everything's about me either.
And probably a lot of the damage that you incur from eating a little bit later is being offset by your social enjoyment anyway, right?
Bingo. Really what you might be doing by trying to overemphasize optimization is that you're kind of like skipping over dollars to pick up pennies.
And I think this is something that you're extremely good at. When I see other functional health practitioners deal with general population clients, all the protocols that they give them often just result in more stress than it resolves because they're so like tightly controlled, so detailed, whereas somehow you're just able to manage the big rocks as opposed to the little pebbles.
Yeah, the concept that you're talking about, it works for most people. It doesn't work for everyone. I don't want to sit over here and say that I have a 100% success rate because and some people just aren't ready. They just aren't ready to make any change at all. I can't do anything with that. So it's interesting you brought that up because that's something that has manifested more and more in the last couple of years is that we have like this protocol burnout. Now we have people talking about protocol burnout because they've done 5 SIBO protocols with 5 different coaches in the last year, or it gets crazy out there. There's people that are afraid to ever eat certain foods again because they were on a low FODMAP diet for 8 months and they don't they have food fear now, and they didn't even have food fear before. Or they, unfortunately, when you start throwing around like terms and labeling and stuff, is that like that can also be create a bit of a victim environment for people too. Is like, yes, if I do some kind of testing on someone, I want to tell them what's there, but I don't want my message to invoke fear and handicap. I don't want to be like, you have XYZ. If you don't do this, then your head's going to explode. Now, granted, if it's very dire, if it's the fact like your literally life is in, like if it's something like that, okay, I'm going to create a little more sense of urgency around that. But I think that people, you're 100% right. A lot of the people that are helping other clients with functional health, they're making people very afraid of food and very afraid of, or unable to go back to, or find, I don't want to say go back to where they were, because that's not really the goal, but find like a normal baseline after they're done with the protocol, or they're stressing them out so damn bad with the complexity of the actual protocol itself. I mean, that completely defeats the purpose. And that's something that you have to assess with people. Some people like myself who have been bodybuilding for 17 years or whatever, doing a protocol where it's like supplements, for example, I don't care if I have to take more pills. Okay, dude, it's pills. I'm gonna just swallow them, whatever. I have like a pill divider. I just put them in there. It's kind of a pain in the butt to organize it, but it's not going to affect me mentally. But some of these folks, if you're trying to completely do a 180 with their entire life, like everything they're doing habitually, supplementation, nutrition, like all these things, it doesn't work like that. Your brain does not do that generally. And if it does, it usually won't sustain it. Recreating habits and like introducing new things is kind of a process. So when I talked about some baseline stuff, it's not because you can't do something more complex. It's just because I know if I try to do something more complex not with everyone, but with a lot of people, they're going to be more stressed, right? I'm going to create more hyperfixation. I'm going to create more anxiety. I'm going to create more stuff in their day, and they already don't have enough time in their day anyhow, because we're all too busy. So I don't really feel like that's very effective personally, but sometimes people are ready for the complexity. Maybe they've just done the basics for a while and they're in a good place. Everything's steady and we have some more work to do. We will implement more complex protocols. Maybe they are a bodybuilder who's been habitually consistent, tracking, doing all the things. Variables are pretty consistent. They might be able to do something more complex, or complexity might be the whole reason that they're in that position in the first place. And this is like stuff that you have to be able to vet out as a coach. Is like I have some people in off season right now, and like they asked me like, what is my goals for the off season? I said, well, grow muscle. We need to get your delts bigger. I'm going to customize specialization in your training. I got all that stuff. I got the programming. I'll adjust, do the things that the coaches do every week. But I said, here's some other goals. I want you to find a new hobby. I want you to find some things you enjoy. I want you to do these other things. And it's funny when they come back like, man, I'm making a lot better progress. And I'm not like putting any more focus into bodybuilding. I said, because you already know how to bodybuild. I'm doing all the thinking. You don't even have to think.
But these people, first of all, come back with some like extreme sport as their new hobby that they're trying to reduce stress with.
Well, hopefully they're not picking up marathon running or hiking 10 miles up the side of a mountain for stress relief, which, by the way, guys, training is not a stress reliever. First off, psychologically enjoying training and getting some neurochemical benefit from training, I got you. But training physically is very stressful on your body. So when we say stress relief, it is something that is probably not physically intensive, that does not raise your heart rate that much. I guess playing video games could be a stress relief for some people, but that's probably a slippery slope too.
Exactly.
If you're sitting there for 3 hours screaming at Call of Duty on your screen.
How important is it for jump up people to not be in a calorie deficit and not train super hard and close to failure?
What was the last part of that? I'm sorry.
For jump up clients, how important with stress issues, how important is it that they are not in a huge calorie deficit and that they don't train very close to failure and very hard?
For general population, I think that they probably don't have, not all, but most of them probably don't have really, really extreme goals muscularity wise. Right. And if a primary goal is fat loss, what is training designed? I mean, the training is kind of more of like muscle retention, and we know that it takes a lot less training load to maintain muscle than it does to build it. So realistically, you probably don't, especially in a general population person, because their minimum effective dose is so low because they don't have that much to begin with, that you probably really don't need anything super crazy. It's probably, I would actually say it's probably completely unnecessary to beat them to death in the gym. They could probably, I'm not, and again, I don't like to make absolute statements, but for maintenance of muscle, I mean, they could probably train 2 days a week full body as long as it's decently intense, and they'd probably be fine. Maybe a third day, if they have a little more muscle, a third day. Now, they do have situations where they are, I would say a newer trainee could maybe take advantage of the fact they're new and probably build some muscle because they don't require that much. So that's an advantage to that. And really the last piece of that was you probably would need to understand fat loss versus looking better, because more muscle might also help that. If you have zero muscle, it's kind of, and they're like, hey, here's a picture. This is what I want. I'm like, well, there's not nothing to hold that up when, we peel it off. So maybe understanding what that actually looks like.
Thank you very much for coming on the podcast, Austin.
Yeah, no
Where
problem.
Can people find you?
Everyone can find me on easiest places on Instagram. Go to at Austin St number 8. In my link tree in my bio, if you just go to the link tree, it's got website, YouTube channel, Facebook, emails in the bio. If you want to inquire about any services, shoot me an email. I'm very responsive.
Yeah, I can attest to that. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.